All right, we're live again. I'm crossing my fingers that this one actually works. This is like the third one that we've tried. So we've been having some technical difficulties. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have a guest on today, and we've tried to have our guest join a couple of times, but for some reason when she joins, I can hear her, but like Instagram isn't looping her in as a guest. So we're going to see if this time it actually works. If not, we may end up having to just delay this live for a little bit because, obviously we want to be able to talk to our guest and talk about what's going on in Portland. Ah, she's on. Okay. Yay, I can
Yes,
see
it worked.
you. I was like, oh no, what if we have to like delay this? That would really suck.
Oh, I know. And what's so funny is that totally happened to me yesterday. Yesterday I had a live with a media group, and for 15 minutes it was like, Katarina, where are you? Where are you? I'm like, I'm right here. I promise.
Oh my gosh, well I'm glad that it works now. And how do you say your last names? Because it's Katarina
Viegas.
Viegas. Okay. Because I was
No.
going to say it that way, but then I was like, oh, if I'm saying it wrong, I'm going to be really embarrassed. But thanks
No,
for
it's
joining.
totally right because it's a Spanish last name, and whenever people ask like, how do I remember it? I'm like, yay, guess. So.
That's funny. That's funny. Usually I have to tell people that with like my first name because usually people say Chelsea, so I try to say Cheslie like Leslie, and it helps them to remember it. Just like replace the L with the CH, and maybe they'll.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm very passionate about correcting people who say your name wrong all the time. Whenever anyone mentions Miss USA Chelsea, I'm like, no, no, that is not the Queen's name.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Having soldiers on the ground. So obviously we want to talk about what's going on in the state that you're representing in Oregon, because there's been a lot of clash between federal agents and protesters, demonstrators in Portland. So first, where are you right now?
So I'm in Hillsboro. So Hillsboro is right outside of Portland. We haven't really had any major protests or anything since June. So, and with COVID being so real, still so real, so scary, I have not had the opportunity to really go out and see for myself what's going on, just because I have family with asthma. I have a cousin who has autism who's completely nonverbal. So if the kid gets sick, it's just kind of like, what do we do?
Yeah.
We can't have that communication. So it's just been a lot of, reaching out to friends. Hey, you live right in the heart of Portland. What are you seeing? Or even friends who are independent journalists going in and filming everything. And
what are they seeing?
They're seeing tear gassing. You're seeing a variety of things, really. You're seeing moms who are united, and you're seeing dads of Portland united, and then you're seeing destruction and chaos and federal agents taking people, throwing them into vans and not really knowing what's going on or where we're going. And there's just so much confusion, and my heart is just hurting so much for my state, for our nation, just because it's like, what is going on? It's like, that.
And there are a lot of people who don't know what's going on, especially people who aren't in Oregon. So for people who are watching, who don't know, what's happening, I mean, in the heart of Portland, there are people who are demonstrating, there are peaceful protesters, there are some other people who are violent, who have caused some, destruction of property, who have been fighting with officers, but that is a very small minority of the people who are out. The majority of people are peaceful protesters and demonstrators. And Katarina, tell me your understanding of what these demonstrators are protesting about, because we've seen people protesting across the country, especially in June, but now it's July and a lot of those protests have sort of died down. So why are people still out in Portland?
Right now, it's mostly against the federal agents' presence in Portland. It's about militarizing our police. It's about taking these extra steps with law enforcement that are escalating the situation as we're seeing it. So I feel like the protests have shifted a lot towards that. They're more aimed at what's going on with law enforcement, what are these tactics, and what is this communication and these messages that you're trying to send? Because like you said, we did see protests start to shrink in size, but now that we have federal agents in Portland, all of a sudden it's everybody's back out. Everybody's back out to say, hey, we think that you are infringing on some of our rights here. So it's a lot of It's a lot of questions of, are we overstepping boundaries? And like you mentioned, we have a majority of peaceful protesters, and then you've got that group of individual who unfortunately overshadow a lot of what we see. So it's hard for us as humans, as people, to be able to see the good. I think sometimes we tend to look straight to the negative first, where we're just like, oh, there's destruction. And it's like, I get it, but look at everything else that's going on too. And let's try to understand human behavior and get to the bottom of why this is happening.
Exactly. Well, and I think, like we both said, that we've seen this, majority peaceful protesters, and then you have, some rioters and some violent people who are out in the mix. Why do you think what's your understanding of why these federal agents were sent to Portland, even though they're, largely peaceful protesters and demonstrators on the streets?
Ultimately, I think it's the president's executive order to protect the federal monuments. So it's like, if he suspects, oh, well, they're going to start messing with these things, I'm going to go ahead and put them in immediately just to prevent that from happening. And I think that what we don't understand as a nation entirely is, there's so much division over this issue, so much, but it's like, if we can get down to the root of human behavior and how we naturally react to situations, we can start to unpack why this doesn't work and why this is a little bit of a bad idea.
And you mean, when you're talking about why this doesn't work, you're talking about, sending in federal agents who, are armed with tear gas, who are tear gassing people. There was an article that I read just this morning that said the mayor of Portland was among the protesters and was himself tear gassed.
It literally popped up on my phone right as we came onto the live, and I thought, oh, nice to just add it to the list of everything that's going on.
Yeah, well, I think, we may be talking about the same alert. I subscribe to the New York Times, among, a ton of other news outlets, and I get some of their major news updates. And so I got an update today that was saying that the mayor of Portland was tear gassed, and they included a quote in their article that said, the mayor had seen nothing that should have provoked the usage of tear gas. And he was, surprised to see that, especially since he was among the protesters. And, I think he's one of many officials in Portland who are like, we don't need federal agents. We can police our own city. We can, make sure that the peaceful protesters are staying safe, and that, we're just controlling the rioters who are separate. But we don't need federal agents to do that.
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you a story, and for everyone who's watching, just to kind of help understand how I think people are really ultimately understanding this. And it's so funny. I'm a doctor of psychology student. So whenever I look at anything, I like to get down to the root of, what is it that is provoking people to act in certain ways, react to situations, what's motivating their actions. And so my freshman year of high school, I went to a school where I was treated like an adult. I was a freshman in high school, but I was treated like a freshman in college because it was a college prep school. And it was amazing. I didn't necessarily have to have my parents' signature on anything because they trusted that we were just going to do the work. What happens when you have people that are treated with respect? They're going to respect you back. They're going to respect authority. So after my freshman year, I ended up transferring to another school that was quadruple the population of the first school that I went to. And it was a totally different environment. We had security guards at every single entrance. So we had the school completely fenced in. And there were days that I would get yelled at for no reason whatsoever, where I would be walking to class and I wasn't walking fast enough. Or I stopped right outside of the door just to pull my notebook out, just so I could go ahead, sit down, open it up. I would get yelled at. Or if there was the entrance and I had an off-campus lunch pass and I was walking, I was getting yelled at 20 feet from the gate saying that you need to have this ready. And me feeling like, why am I being treated like a student criminal? It made me rebel a little bit. I have to be honest. It made me say, hey, hold on a second. Who are you? Who are you that you think that you can talk to me this way when I have done absolutely nothing at all to provoke this reaction from you? I think that if you paid more attention, you would see that I wasn't hurting you. I wasn't hurting anyone. And there were many times where I had to restrain myself and say, okay, this is still authority. This is an authority figure. And I just kind of have to let it go. But
Do
the
you
point
think
of
that
that
that's
is,
how many of the people in Portland feel, many of the peaceful protesters and demonstrators are feeling?
yes, because if you think about it, you look at that situation and you say, if it's my right to protest and I'm standing here with my sign and I'm yelling and I'm talking about the things that are important to me, who are you to come in and take this right away from me and
Mhm.
tell me that I can't do this? When am I really hurting you?
Mhm.
So it's like when you think about those things, yeah, it is an over escalation. It is a situation where it's like you see these situations and it doesn't line up. And I think that naturally as humans, it's our natural reaction to kind of spark up that anger and that irritation in us, and then we act out on that.
Mhm. Well, and I think that, there are people there who are, exercising the rights that we've been given. And, we all have the right to peacefully assemble, and that's what
Mhm.
people want to do. And so I think when we end up lumping people together, when we end up lumping together, rioters and violent people with peaceful protesters and demonstrators, I think that's when you see people who are confused and we're like, why are you treating us this way? We're being peaceful. We just want to, protest and be angry, but in, a peaceful way. Why are you lumping us in with these people who are being violent? I went to a
Exactly.
protest. I went to 2 protests, and I got to tell you, it feels really good to walk around, with your sign, or walk around with a group of people and chant and yell and march and make sure that people are seeing you and hearing you. And people should be able to do that. And so it's unfortunate to see, people, escalating situations that just don't need to be escalated, and, using tactics like tear gas and violence
Mhm.
on peaceful protesters, because there is a difference between a peaceful protester and
Mhm.
a rioter.
Mhm.
And, I think it's
Mhm.
dangerous when we, lump them in together.
Right. And that's what we have to recognize,
Mm-hmm.
the difference. Exactly as you said it. We have to recognize the difference. And it's really unfortunate because when you have, even if it's a small group, even if it's a small group that's acting violently, they are putting everyone else in danger. And it's a really, really unfortunate situation. But I just think to myself, man, this all could have just been prevented. It could have been prevented from the start if we took the time to validate us. Like, if we took the time to validate people. Like, when you think about a little kid, for example,
Mm-hmm.
a kid is saying, Mom, my sister hit me, or this kid at school is bullying me. This is happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom's busy and thinks this is not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And she ignores it and says, yeah, whatever. Like, be quiet. Go away. I don't have time to listen to you right now. Does the kid actually stop? Does he
Yeah.
stop complaining?
And it's not
No,
even
he
just
gets
listening. I
louder.
think it's actually taking action that people really want. Because I think,
Exactly.
there are people who claim to understand the grievances that groups like Black Lives Matter are explaining. But if you are listening to us, then you should take some action, and you should, make some change. And I think people are angry because we haven't seen change, and we have been screaming, and people have been listening, but like they haven't been doing anything about it. And so
Mhm.
I'm glad that, we have seen some action taken, and we have seen some change just in the last few weeks of seeing these protests, which has been a good thing.
Right.
So what do you think? What responsibility do you have to speak out because of, your role as Miss Oregon USA, and how have you used the platform that you have, to affect positive change?
Ultimately, I think it's just aiming to unify the community. I think that there's so many things that it's like you kind of got to be careful with what you say when you go about handling different issues, just because you don't want to leave anyone feeling left out. You don't want to leave anyone feeling unheard. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's back to that validation and that feeling of respect. It's about bringing people together to say, hey, I know that this is what you see, and I know that this is what you see. But in what ways can we come together to see how we can fix this, and we can do something about this? How can we come to a deeper understanding instead of criticizing one another and saying, now, why would you do that? Why don't we ask each other, what is it that you value?
Mm-hmm.
What are things that are important to you? And in what way can I contribute to that in my own power? And that's ultimately what I've been trying to use my title as to promote. And
How do you think that you've done
really,
that? Have you been, using social media? You've been like setting up, conferences with people?
Using social media, having a lot of conversations and conference calls with people, and doing fun things too, doing a lot of fun things. So with COVID, we've had to just completely adapt. We've had to change our way of doing things. And I think that it's frustrating, but it's also a blessing at the same time, because it's like you reach a much bigger audience doing that. So I hosted a virtual benefit concert to support Feeding America.
Oh, totally.
And it was just so much fun. We had Rob Mays, Justin Kawika Young. We had Ruthie Kraft, who was on season 2 of American Idol. And we just had a lot of amazing artists come out. And it was just an awesome time to be able to say, hey, let's donate to this cause, but at the same time, integrate into our speech of, unity and remembering that it's important to put others first. It's like we have a lot more to gain in life, and I think that we'll become more successful as individuals when we can put others first, and when we can say, hey, I'm not important right now. This is an issue that's happening right now, and this is what we need to pay attention to. And so we just asked every single artist, why is Feeding America important to you? What do you think is something that is really lacking in society during this time? And it was just a great conversation throughout the night.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you did that, because I think you're right that I think, using positive outlets for people is a great way to just, elevate the conversation, to add levity to what's going on right now, and to help. And I think that it's important that, members of the pageant world understand that you have a title not just to, look pretty and wear a crown on your head, but you have it because you want to make positive change. And I think it sounds like that's what you're doing. Now, you've been competing for a few years, right? I mean, this isn't the first title that you've held, your first state title, right?
It is for USA. I mean, obviously, we can only compete once. and we can only go compete once and have the title. Yeah. But I started competing when I was 17.
Wow.
And then it was my very first pageant. And after that, I said, I am never doing this ever again. Okay, look, girl, I was the kid. Oh my gosh, I was the kid that didn't take a brush to her hair. Like, I was like tomboy at heart. I was athletic. I was on the swim team, chlorinated, bleached mess all the time. And when I told my mom, I was like, hey, somebody nominated me for a pageant. She's like, oh, that's funny. And I was like, I think I want to do it. Really? Are you sure? And so after that, she's like, all right. I didn't place. It was horrifying, and I said I would never do it again. But years later, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in communication studies, and I said, I might as well just try it again. Like, what do I really have to lose? And I mean, it's not like I had anything to lose. I gained an experience, but no, still didn't place. And then I tried other systems.
And when you were competing, you said, so you competed after you graduated from undergrad. Was this like a state title? And by the way, guys, if you guys have specific questions for Katerina, make sure to drop them in the question box at the bottom that has a little question mark on it. But okay, so you competed again right after undergrad, and then what happened?
And then I didn't place, and I just did prelim after prelim after prelim, and it wasn't happening. And finally, someone said, hey, I think you should try a different system. Try a different system, see what happens.
Which I did were you competing in then?
The USA system.
Okay.
So and it wasn't working for me. And
I didn't even know, because there aren't, at least in North Carolina, there aren't that many prelims. Which state were you competing in then?
At the time, I was competing in California.
Okay, gotcha.
That's where I grew up.
And California is so competitive. Oh my gosh.
So competitive. Yeah. So competitive.
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember, my Miss California, Erica Dan, who's just, oh my God, she's an incredible person. I mean, she's beautiful. She's so nice. She's so accomplished. And I remember sitting down and talking with her at Miss USA. This is like, I don't know, maybe like a couple days before prelims. And I didn't know that much about her, so we're just sitting there talking. And I was like, yeah, so how many times did you compete in California? Because I know that California is super competitive. And she was like, once. It's like, you won your first try? She's like, yeah. And I just remember thinking, like, she's gonna win Miss USA. Like, there's no way
Right.
that I could win Miss USA. This woman is competing in California. But just knowing, how difficult it is to win in
Right.
California. There's so many Miss USAs who have competed in California and then gone to a different state and ended up winning, a different state and then winning, Miss USA, which has been, incredible. And also, Miss USA is like Alyssa Campanella, who won in California and then won in Miss USA. So it is very, very competitive. So it's interesting to hear your story. But go ahead. Okay, so you're competing in these prelims in California, and then you switch systems.
I did. I switched. So I tried the US international system and I placed first runner up at the national competition. And after that, I said, okay, you know what? That's as close as I'm going to get. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I was like, my heart can't handle it. I just can't do it. And it's just so funny because pageants teach you persistence. My goodness. They teach you a lot about not giving up and just constantly building that confidence within yourself. But I think it's not just confidence. It's finding that fine line between confidence and humility. And learning how to be able to express yourself while not being conceited, and learning what it is that you're supposed to be valuing during this time. Is it awesome that you get to wear a crown and have sash and feel pretty all the time? Of course it is. Like, that's so much fun, but that's not what it's about.
Well, and I think it's a testament to, how much people gain from competing in pageants, that so many women compete and come back and, obviously want to win, but find value in competing and, decide to come back even if there is no guarantee, even though there is no guarantee of you winning. So I think that's really, really cool. So, you switched to other systems and then you came back to USA.
I did. And it's so funny because if I'm being completely honest, it was on a whim. It was
really?
Totally on a whim. I mean, I hadn't competed in a few years. It's been years. And I had just finished up my master's in psychology, and then I started my doctorate program, and I had decided I want to write a book. I want to write a book that is going to help people. And I say that just because how many of us say, I'm going to write a book and we'll work on it forever and forever.
And then it never happens. But like, no, you're
and it never happens. But every day I've just been saying a little bit every day, a little bit every day, even if it takes a year, a little bit every day. And I really wanted to focus on helping my family because I mentioned earlier, my cousin has autism and he's one of 3 cousins of mine that has autism. And I really wanted to understand these developmental disorders, and I wanted to know how it was that I could help. And so I decided that I was going to move from state to state, hang out with my family, get to better know my cousins and really adapt with them and find out what are areas that I think more research needs to be done in the field.
And so writing this book drew you back to pageants because you were in a different state?
It did, because I kind of sat there and I had many people telling me, they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm writing a book, I'm going to school. And they said, but you could compete. And I said, no. No, that's not for me. Because I had completely just switched gears where I have 2 songs that actually made the Billboard chart in the past few years. So for me, it was music and psychology, and putting the 2 together.
How many times have you sung Hey Mommy on radio stations and in front of people in concerts?
I don't even know. I would say maybe at least 30 times, maybe around 30. So it's not that many, but it's like I'm definitely sick of my own song by now.
Can you imagine being like a recording artist and doing tours for years? Like could you imagine like Mariah Carey still singing some of the songs that she, came out with in like the 90s? I couldn't imagine. Like by now you know them by heart.
Right, exactly. And you sit there and anytime anyone plays it or anyone in the family plays it or my little cousins, whenever they play it, I'm just like, bye. Have fun, bye.
Well, then you competed, and obviously you won in Oregon, USA. And I think this is a really great question that really goes to it. Christina says, did you do something differently the year that you won?
I changed my style completely. As far as looks go, I got a coach and I said, help me find the best version of me. what are the things that I need to focus on? And I think the difference was just the mindset. I think that before I was competing, trying to be who I thought the organization wanted me to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you try so hard where you're like, who is it that they want for this position?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. And with this time, it was kind of like, no, I'm not going to be what the organization wants me to be. I'm going to be me and show them why I have the qualities to fulfill this position.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it was just a complete change of mindset going into it that just made all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the confidence that I didn't have before. I mean, I had a master's degree that I was proud of, and I was in a program that I was proud of. I had music that I achieved things with. And I think that it was just the right timing where I was able to say, look at all these things that have made me feel good about myself that I can be proud of. Whereas before, I was just trying so hard to just fit, what I think they wanted this bio to say.
Yeah, and I think I hear that a lot, and I think that myself about competing. I think there are so many times where I felt like, what if you told the judges about what you're looking for, because I can be that. And I think my final year is just like, whatever, this is my last try. It's my last year of eligibility. Might as well go and do whatever I feel like. Okay, so Super Toto says, I feel like I should yell this because it's in all caps. What makes you unique, Miss Oregon USA 2020?
Well, one of the qualities and things that I think makes me unique, besides, the school aspect and the music together, is that I play Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you know what that is, but
I have
I'm
no idea. It almost sounded like you were speaking a different language just now.
All right. So, Dungeons and Dragons, like the super nerdy, weird thing.
I've heard that name before.
Right. And I mean, you've heard of Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like Magic the Gathering is kind of like Pokemon, or it's a little bit different, or like Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's a card game.
Uh-huh.
And I've sat down and had full-on tournaments with this thing. And so if anyone's watching and knows what Magic the Gathering is,
just know that you've got a card game playing in you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some of these questions are kind of funny. Jessie Alexa 17 says, is it good to do pageant hair or keep your hair natural?
I think it really just depends on what you're comfortable with. I mean, you kept your hair natural for your competition, and you've also done other competitions where you full on styled it and did what pageant hair is.
Yeah.
And I just think that it ultimately depends on what makes you feel most comfortable. I mean, I wore my hair straight at my state competition.
I think it's a matter of expanding what pageant hair is. Because I think for a while, maybe in like the 80s and 90s, it was like, huge bouffant hair. Right. And then, I think in the early 2000s, maybe the 2010s, like the hair was still pretty big, but like a little closer to the scalp. And then, as of late, we've seen more, straight hairstyles. We've seen quite a few people, especially at like Miss Universe, who competed with really long bone straight hair that, wasn't super teased at the top. And then we've seen more women embracing natural curls like Susie Castillo did, like I did, like Kyra McCullough did, and many contestants at Miss Universe who've done. So I think it's just expanding the scope of what pageant hair is to many other styles. And then, natural hair will be pageant hair because there will be no difference. So hopefully we can continue to do that, which I think would be really
right. But it also depends on what your natural hair is. Like me, for example, forget it. It's not going to happen. I roll out of bed and you've got half curly, you've got half straight, and that's just not going to work. You've got half crimped in the back. It's not going to happen.
No, yeah, I feel it. Still got to style somehow. Okay, so Sarah Fudge, this is going to be our last question. Sarah Fudge says, what is one piece of advice you could give to other girls and women? I think that's a great final question.
Mm-hmm. Learn to celebrate others' successes without questioning your own value. And I think that is the most important thing, and a lesson that I think that we just continue to learn as we age. I think that it's really easy to say, I want to be surrounded by inspiring women who are doing incredible things, and it's exciting to do that. But at the same time, it's so easy to look within yourself and say, but I don't meet that standard and I'm not accomplishing any of those things. And it's like, you can't compare your first chapter to someone else's book 4.
Mm-hmm.
So celebrate it.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate them, and don't measure yourself based on someone else's standard.
Yeah.
But let's celebrate each other's successes.
I love it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Katerina. It was great to talk to you. Thank you for giving us some insight into, what's happening in your state, what's happening specifically in Portland, and really just celebrating, what pageantry is and why it gives us this great platform to talk about so many important issues and to really help and insert ourselves into the process. So thank you so much for your time, and best of luck at Miss USA 2020.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me. I got to talk to the queen, everybody.
Perfect. Be safe.